The research station sat like a jewel box on the mountain's crown, perched at 11,000 feet where the air thinned to whispers and the sky pressed close enough to touch. Here, where ordinary people gasped for breath, Captain Celeste Rodriguez, known to everyone as Sky, felt most alive. She stood on the launch platform as dawn broke, her weather-worn hands running along the tether of her atmospheric balloon. The fabric whispered against her fingertips, cool and waiting. Below her stretched an ocean of clouds, pink and gold in the early light, and above was the endless blue she'd loved since childhood. Sky was 27, though the mountain wind had etched fine lines around her eyes that made her look both younger and infinitely older. Her dark hair, always pulled back in a practical braid, had streaks of silver that shouldn't have appeared for another decade. The altitude did that. The solitude did that. But she wouldn't trade it for anything. Or so she told herself. The balloon inflation system hummed to life, a sound she knew better than her own heartbeat. She watched the envelope begin to swell, filling with heated air, becoming the vehicle that would carry her sensors into the storm system approaching from the west. This was her life's work, documenting the atmospheric rivers that brought rain to the drought-stricken valleys below, mapping the invisible currents that shaped weather for thousands of miles. Morning, Captain. Dr. Sarah Chen emerged from the main facility, carrying two steaming mugs. The head meteorologist had been Sky's mentor for 3 years now, the closest thing she had to family at the station. Morning, Sarah. Sky accepted the coffee gratefully, wrapping both hands around the ceramic warmth. Storm's tracking right on schedule. You don't have to go up personally, you know. Sarah's concern was gentle but persistent. We could launch remotely. Sky smiled, the expression not quite reaching her eyes. What would be the point of that? Sarah studied her for a long moment. Sometimes I wonder if you're studying the atmosphere or hiding in it. The words landed soft as snow but heavy as truth. Sky turned back to her balloon, now nearly full, straining against its moorings like a wild thing eager to fly. Maybe both. You're lonely, Sky. I'm alone. There's a difference, is there? Sarah sipped her coffee, her gaze knowing. When's the last time you went down to the valley? Saw friends? Went on a date? Sky laughed, but the sound caught in the thin air. Who would I date? Another researcher who understands why I disappear into storm systems. Another pilot who sees relationships as something to fit between missions. Someone who gets you. Someone who understands that sometimes the people who fly highest are the ones most afraid of falling. The observation struck something deep in Sky's chest, a recognition she wasn't ready to examine. She'd built her life in the sky specifically because it was uncomplicated. The atmosphere followed rules, temperature gradients, pressure systems, predictable chaos. People were different. People could hurt you in ways that altitude sickness never could. I should prep the instruments, Sky said quietly. Sarah squeezed her shoulder. I'm not trying to ground you, sweetheart. I just think maybe it's time to let someone else into your sky. After Sarah returned inside, Sky stood alone with her expanding balloon and the mountain wind that never truly stopped. She thought about Sarah's words as she ran through her pre-flight checklist, testing each sensor connection with practiced efficiency. The truth was, she did feel it, that hollow space beneath her ribs that had nothing to do with altitude. She felt it most acutely at night, when she lay in her narrow bunk and listened to the wind howl around the station's reinforced walls. She felt it when she witnessed something breathtaking, a sunset that painted the clouds in impossible colors, a lightning storm dancing miles below and had no one to turn to, no one to share the wonder. Sky had become so good at being alone that she'd almost convinced herself she preferred it. Almost. The balloon was ready. She climbed into the basket, securing her harness with movements smooth from repetition. Her instruments surrounded her barometers, hygrometers, cloud physics sensors, all the equipment that turned the invisible into data. But today, as she released the moorings and felt the balloon lift, she found herself wondering what data could possibly capture the feeling Sarah had named loneliness. The basket rose smoothly, and the station fell away beneath her. The clouds embraced her like old friends, cool and damp against her skin. She sailed into the white, into the nothing and everything, and tried not to think about how even heaven felt empty when you had no one to share it with. At 15,000 feet, she broke through the cloud layer into crystalline blue. The storm she was. Tracking loomed on the western horizon, a towering cumulonimbus that looked like a castle built by giants. Beautiful, dangerous, exactly her type. She smiled sadly at the thought. Her radio crackled. Sky, this is base. How's it looking up there? Perfect, she replied, her voice steady despite the tightness in her throat. Storm's about 2 hours out. I'm positioning for the first measurements. Copy that. We've got, hold on. Static filled the line. Then Sarah's voice returned, strained. Sky, we've got an emergency situation developing. Medical helicopter inbound with a patient, but they're having equipment trouble. They need to land here to stabilize before continuing to the Valley Hospital. Understood. I'll stay clear of the landing zone. What's the ETA? 15 minutes. Patient is more static. Former instructor suffering from severe vertigo episode. They found him attempting a rehabilitation climb on the south face. Alone, Sky's stomach dropped in a way that had nothing to do with the balloon's gentle sway. Someone climbing alone with vertigo? That was suicide, slow and terrifying. Is he going to make it? Physically, yes. Mentally, Sarah's sigh crackled across the distance. They said he was crying when they found him. Kept saying he just wanted to feel like himself again. Sky looked out at the endless sky, at the storm approaching with its own kind of beauty and terror, and felt something shift in her chest. She understood that desperation, the need to prove you were still who you'd always been, even when everything inside you had changed. I'm coming down, she said suddenly. Sky, you don't have to, I'm coming down. She began her descent, venting. Hot air in controlled bursts, watching the clouds rise up to meet her. For once, she wanted to be on the ground when someone else was falling, because maybe, just maybe, Sarah was right. Maybe it was time to let someone else into her sky. The balloon descended through layers of atmosphere, each one a different temperature, a different pressure, a different world. Sky had always loved this part, the transition between realms. But today she found herself focused not on the science but on the story Sarah had told, someone who'd lost themselves to fear, someone who was trying desperately to find their way back. The station's landing pad emerged from the clouds below, and Sky guided the balloon down with gentle precision. The basket touched Earth with barely a whisper, and she was already disconnecting her harness, already moving toward the facility where a helicopter would soon arrive carrying a stranger. A stranger who understood what it meant to lose yourself in the sky. She didn't know his name yet, didn't know his face or his history or what his eyes looked like when he spoke of heights, but standing there on solid ground, waiting as the distant sound of rotor blades grew closer, Sky felt her carefully constructed solitude begin to crack. And for the first time in years, she wasn't sure if that terrified her or thrilled her. The helicopter appeared first as a sound, that distinctive whoop 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 that echoed differently at altitude, bouncing off the mountain peaks in rhythmic waves. Sky stood on the landing pad with the medical team, her hair whipping in the rotor wash as the aircraft descended through scattered clouds. She'd changed from her flight suit into jeans and a thick wool sweater, but she still felt exposed somehow. Nervous, which was ridiculous. She'd faced down Category 5 hurricanes and didn't flinch, but the prospect of meeting another person who lived in the sky made her pulse quicken in unfamiliar ways. The helicopter settled onto the pad with practiced grace. Through the windows, Sky could see the pilot and co-pilot, the two paramedics in back, and between them, the doors slid open. Jackson Morrison looked nothing like Sky had imagined. She'd pictured someone broken, diminished by fear and failure. Instead, the man who emerged supported by the paramedics but walking on his own moved with a kind of exhausted dignity that took her breath away. He was tall, with the lean build of someone whose body was a tool for flight. His hair, dark and disheveled, fell across a face that was all strong lines and sharper angles. But it was his eyes that arrested her, gray as storm clouds, and just as turbulent, they swept across the station, taking in the altitude, the thinness of the air, and Sky saw his jaw tighten with something that might have been determination or might have been barely controlled panic. Those eyes found hers. The world seemed to still between one heartbeat and the next. Later, Sky would try to explain it to Sarah, this moment of recognition that made no logical sense. She'd never met this man, didn't know his story beyond the bare outline radioed in. But when Jackson's gaze locked with hers, something in her chest responded like a compass finding true north. She saw him blink, saw confusion flicker across his features, as if he felt it too. Then his knees buckled. Sky moved without thinking, covering the distance in 3 quick strides. She caught his arm just as the paramedics reached for him, and the contact skin on skin despite the mountain cold sent electricity singing up her nerves. "I've got you," she said. The words emerging steadier than she felt. Jackson's head turned toward her, and up close his eyes were even more striking. Gray with flecks of silver, like clouds lit by lightning from within. "I'm fine," he managed, but his weight was heavy against her shoulder, his breathing too quick. Just the altitude, plus the vertigo, plus the panic attack, plus attempting a solo climb after being explicitly told not to exert yourself, one of the paramedics said dryly. She was a woman in her 50s with the kind of no-nonsense expression that suggested she'd seen everything and wasn't impressed by any of it. "This is Jackson Morrison, former record holder for highest solo skydive, former instructor at Apex Adventures, former sense of self-preservation owner." Kate, Jackson protested weakly. "Don't Kate me. You could have died out there, Jocks." But her hand on his other arm was gentle, almost motherly. "Let's get you inside and stabilized." They moved as a unit toward the medical bay, Sky still supporting Jackson's weight. She was acutely aware of every point of contact, his arm across her shoulders, her hand at his waist, the way his breathing gradually slowed as they walked. He smelled like mountain air and adrenaline and something cedar sweet beneath it all. "You're strong," he murmured, and there was surprise in his voice. "Have to be. The altitude doesn't forgive weakness. Nothing up here does." His laugh was bitter. "Which is exactly why I shouldn't be here." Sky glanced at him, at the defeated slope of his shoulders, and felt an unexpected surge of protectiveness. "Or maybe it's exactly why you should." He looked at her again, really looked, and Sky felt pinned by that storm cloud gaze. "Who are you?" "Captain Celeste Rodriguez." "Everyone calls me Sky." "Of course they do," he said softly. "You look like you were born to it. The altitude, the freedom, and you look like you're fighting it." "I am." The admission seemed to cost him something. "I'm losing." They reached the medical bay, where Dr. Chen was waiting with oxygen and monitoring equipment. As the paramedics transferred Jackson to the examination table, Sky stepped back, suddenly unsure of her place. She'd done her part. The medical team would handle the rest. She should return to her balloon, to her instruments, to her comfortable solitude. But she couldn't make herself leave. Dr. Chen worked efficiently, checking Jackson's vitals while asking him standard questions about his symptoms. Sky hovered near the door, telling herself she was just making sure the patient was stable, telling herself it had nothing to do with the way her skin still tingled where she'd touched him. Blood pressure's elevated but not dangerous, Dr. Chen announced. Oxygen saturation is lower than I'd like at this altitude, but that's expected given the circumstances. Mr. Morrison, what possessed you to attempt to climb alone? Jackson's eyes had drifted closed, but they opened at the question. He stared at the ceiling for a long moment. I used to jump out of planes at 40,000 feet for fun. I'd free fall for miles and feel more alive than I ever did on the ground. His voice cracked. Now I can't stand on a second-story balcony without the world spinning. I thought, if I could just push through it. That's not how vertigo works, Dr. Chen said gently. I know, his hands fisted in the sheets. I know that. But I had to try something. I can't keep living like this afraid of heights when heights are all I've ever known. Sky found herself moving forward before she'd made a conscious decision. What if you didn't have to push through it? What if there was another way? Everyone turned to look at her. Jackson's eyebrows drew together. What do you mean? She wasn't entirely sure herself. The idea was forming even as she spoke, intuitive rather than logical. Your vertigo, it's about disorientation, right? Your brain receiving conflicting signals about where you are in space? That's the simplified version, yes. So what if instead of fighting it, you retrain it? Slowly. Controlled exposure in an environment where you feel safe. Kate, the paramedic, crossed her arms. That's literally what his doctors have been trying for 6 months. Hasn't worked because he's been doing it on the ground. Sky looked at Jackson, really looked at him, and saw something flicker in those storm cloud eyes. Hope, maybe, or just desperation disguised as possibility. But what if the problem isn't the height itself? What if it's the sudden transition? The jarring shift from ground to elevation? I'm not following, Dr. Chen said, but Jackson was. She could see it in the way he pushed himself up on his elbows, the way his gaze sharpened with sudden intensity. You're talking about gradual ascent in a weather balloon. It's the smoothest climb there is. No engine vibration, no turbulence from rotor wash, just gentle rising. Like the sky itself is lifting you. The room went quiet except for the soft beep of monitoring equipment. Sky felt he tries in her cheeks. It was a crazy idea, unprofessional. She was a researcher, not a therapist, and this man was a patient, not what. Not someone who made her pulse race and her carefully ordered world feel suddenly too small. That's actually not a terrible idea, Dr. Chen said slowly. Exposure therapy works best when the patient feels in control. A balloon would provide that in a way other aircraft can't. But he'd need medical clearance, Kate interjected. And supervision. And I'll do it. Everyone looked at Jackson. He was sitting fully upright now, and though his face was still pale, there was determination in his expression. If Captain Rodriguez is willing, I'll do it. Whatever protocols you need, whatever safety measures, I'll follow them all. But I need, his voice dropped. I need to try. His eyes found Sky's again, and the naked vulnerability in them made her breath catch. this wasn't just about conquering vertigo. This was about reclaiming a lost self, about finding the courage to be who you'd always been. She understood that more than he could possibly know. Then we'll try, she heard herself say. Together, the word hung in the air between them, weighted with meanings neither of them fully understood yet. Together, such a simple concept. But Sky had built her entire life around avoiding it. Why did it feel so right now? Kate and Dr. Chen exchanged a glance that Sky couldn't quite read. Then Kate sighed. I'll contact his doctors. Get the clearances. But this goes slow, you hear me, Jocks? No heroics, no heroics, he agreed, though a ghost of a smile tugged at his mouth. Just science, Sky echoed. But her heart was beating too fast for those words to be entirely true. After the helicopter departed and Dr. Chen returned to her regular duties, Sky found herself alone with Jackson in the medical bay. He was cleared to stay overnight for observation, given that descending immediately might exacerbate his symptoms. The station had guest quarters for visiting researchers, small but functional rooms with narrow beds and windows that opened onto infinity. I should let you rest, Sky said. But she didn't move toward the door. I should rest, Jackson agreed, but his eyes stayed on her face. But I'm not tired anymore. Adrenaline, probably. Silence stretched between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It felt like the pause between lightning and thunder charged with potential, waiting for something to break. Why are you doing this? Jackson asked suddenly. You don't know me. I'm a complete stranger with a condition that might never improve. Why offer to help? Sky considered deflecting, offering some professional explanation about research opportunities or facility protocols. But something about the way he'd looked at her, about the way he was looking at her now demanded honesty. Because I know what it feels like, she said quietly. To lose yourself in the sky, his head tilted, curious. You seem pretty found to me, do I? She moved to the window, gazing out at the cloud sea below. I came up here 3 years ago for a 6-month research project. I never left. Sarah, Dr. Chen, she asked me this morning when I'd last gone down to the valley. I couldn't remember. So you hide in the clouds, and you hide from them. Sky turned back to face him. Maybe we're not so different. Jackson studied her with an intensity that made her feel simultaneously exposed and seen. I think, he said slowly, that we're very different. But maybe that's not a bad thing. No. No, he swung his legs off the examination table, moving carefully, testing his balance. You love the sky because it's freedom. I loved it because it was fearlessness. Now I've lost my fearlessness, and you've maybe forgotten that freedom means something different when you share it. The observation landed like a stone in still water, sending ripples through skies carefully maintained equilibrium. That's very perceptive for someone suffering from altitude sickness. I'm a good reader of people. Comes from teaching you learn to see what students aren't saying. He took a step toward her, then another, his gait steadying with each movement. You're lonely, Captain Rodriguez, and you're terrified of being lonely. So you tell yourself you prefer solitude. Sky's throat tightened. You don't know me. Maybe not. But I know that look in your eyes when you talk about the sky. It's the same look I used to have. The one that says, if I stay up here, I'm safe from ever falling. He was close now, close enough that she could see the silver flecks in his irises, the faint scar above his left eyebrow. But Captain Rodriguez's sky were already falling. We have been this whole time. The question is whether we're brave enough to enjoy the view on the way down. Sky's heart was hammering against her ribs. No one had ever spoken to her like this, with this combination of insight and recklessness, of vulnerability and challenge. She should step back, should establish professional boundaries, should remember all the reasons she'd chosen solitude in the first place. Instead, she heard herself whisper, "What if I'm not brave enough?" Jackson's smile was slow and devastating. "Then we'll learn together." And standing there in the mountain facility with clouds pressing against the windows and the whole vast sky waiting above them, Sky felt something she hadn't experienced in years, the exhilarating, terrifying sensation of free fall, the beginning of something that would change everything. The first flight was scheduled for dawn 3 days later. After medical clearances came through and Dr. Chen had run every safety protocol twice, Sky had spent those 3 days trying and failing not to think about Jackson Morrison. He'd proven to be an impossible person to ignore. She'd see him in the facility's small gym, working through the careful exercise routine his physical therapist had prescribed. His movements were controlled, precise, beautiful in the way that bodies trained for a specific purpose always are. Once she'd caught him watching her through the window as she prepped her balloon, and the weight of his gaze had made her fumble a connection she could normally do in her sleep. They'd shared meals in the communal dining area, conversations flowing with unexpected ease. He told her about his years as an instructor, about the unique personality of each student he'd taught. She told him about atmospheric rivers and the poetry hidden in pressure systems. And somehow, without either of them planning it, those conversations had stretched later and later into the evening. Last night they'd talked until a.m., sitting in the observation lounge with mugs of tea cooling between them and the stars wheeling overhead. He'd told her about the day his vertigo first appeared, a routine tandem jump that had ended with him vomiting in the landing zone, the world tilting sickeningly around him. She'd told him about the hurricane she'd flown into at 18,000 feet, the one that had convinced her she'd rather face nature's fury than human complexity. "We're both running," he'd said quietly. "Maybe," she'd agreed. "But at least we're running towards something instead of just away." Now, watching the pre-dawn darkness give way to gray light, Sky wondered if she'd been honest. What was she running toward? What did she hope to find up there in the balloon basket with this man whose presence had somehow become essential to her in less than a week? "Ready when you are, Captain." Jackson's voice pulled her from her thoughts. He stood near the basket, dressed in the thermal gear she'd provided, layers of fleece and down against the cold that came with altitude. He looked nervous but determined, his jaw set in a way that suggested he'd made a decision and wouldn't be swayed from it. "Ready," Sky confirmed, though her hands trembled slightly as she ran through the final checklist. "We'll ascend slowly, maybe 200 feet per minute. If you feel any discomfort at all, you tell me immediately. No heroics, remember. No heroics." He climbed into the basket with her help, his hand gripping hers perhaps longer than strictly necessary. Just science," she echoed, but her pulse said otherwise. The basket was small, designed for one researcher and their equipment, not two adults trying to maintain professional distance. They stood close enough that Sky could feel the warmth radiating from Jackson's body, could smell that cedar sweet scent beneath the practical smell of weather-resistant fabric. She released the moorings, the balloon lifted with its characteristic gentle grace. And Sky watched Jackson's face carefully. His eyes were closed, his breathing measured. One hand gripped the basket's edge, knuckles white with tension. "Talk to me," Sky said softly. "What are you feeling?" "Everything." His eyes opened, meeting hers. "The movement, the sensation of rising. But it's not terrible. Not like before. They rose through 100 feet. 200. The station fell away beneath them, and the first rays of sunlight struck the balloon's envelope, turning the fabric golden. Look down, Sky encouraged. Slowly, you're in control of the movement, track it with your eyes. Jackson turned inch by careful inch until he was gazing at the ground below. Sky saw his throat work as he swallowed hard. But he didn't look away. I used to love this view, he murmured. Used to crave it. The way the world looks small from above, all the complicated things reduced to patterns and shapes. It's still beautiful, Sky said. You're still here to see it, am I? He looked at her, and the vulnerability in his expression made her chest ache. Some days I'm not sure. I feel like a ghost of who I used to be. At 500 feet, Sky reduced their ascent rate, letting them hover in the morning air. They were above the clouds now, floating in that liminal space between earth and heaven that she loved most. The rising sun painted everything in shades of amber and rose. Can I tell you something? Sky moved closer to him, not quite touching, but near enough that she could feel the shift in air between them. I don't think you're a ghost. I think you're someone brave enough to admit they're afraid. That doesn't feel brave. It's the bravest thing there is. She gestured to the endless sky around them. Fear isn't the opposite of courage, Jackson. It's the proof of it. You can't be brave if you're not afraid first. He considered this, his gaze distant. Then, slowly, he released his death grip on the basket's edge. His hand found hers instead, tentative at first, then firmer as she laced her fingers through his. Tell me about your research, he said. Tell me why you chase storms, so Sky did. As they drifted higher slowly, so slowly she told him about atmospheric rivers, about the invisible currents that carried moisture from tropical oceans to thirsty continents. She explained how her balloon measurements helped predict droughts and floods, how understanding the sky meant protecting people on the ground. It's about connection, she realized aloud. The sky and the earth aren't separate, they're constantly affecting each other. I guess I forgot that applies to people too. Easy to forget when you live in the clouds, Jackson said, but there was no judgment in his voice. Just understanding at 1,000 feet, he started to tremble. Not violently, but enough that Sky noticed immediately. We're going back down, she said. No, his grip on her hand tightened. Not yet. I'm not in danger, it's just fear. I need to sit with it. Jackson, please. He turned to face her fully, and the morning light caught the gray of his eyes, turning them luminous. I've been running from fear for 6 months. Maybe it's time I let it catch up. They hovered there, suspended between sky and earth, while Jackson breathed through his anxiety. Sky watched him work through it, the conscious steadying of his breath, the deliberate relaxation of his shoulders, the way his eyes kept returning to her face as if she were his anchor. Better? She asked after several minutes, getting there. He managed a shaky smile. You're good at this. The patience, the calm. Do you practice, or is it natural? Necessity. The atmosphere doesn't respond well to panic and people. People scare me more than any storm system, because storms are predictable. Because storms don't ask for anything back. The admission hung between them, heavy with truth. Jackson studied her face, and Sky felt more exposed than she'd ever felt at altitude. What if someone asked? He said quietly. What if someone wanted to give as much as they took? Sky's breath caught. I wouldn't know what to do with that. Neither would I anymore. He lifted his free hand, hesitating, then gently brushed a strand of hair from her face. The touch was feather light, but it sent electricity cascading down her spine. But maybe we could figure it out together. There it was again, that word. Together. Sky had spent 3 years convincing herself she didn't need it. But standing here with Jackson's hand warm in hers and the sunrise painting the world in impossible colors, she couldn't remember why she'd been so determined to be alone. We should head down, she said, though every part of her wanted to stay suspended here forever. Build up slowly. This was good for a first flight. It was more than good. Jackson's thumb traced circles on her palm, probably unconsciously. Thank you, Sky, for believing I could do this when I'd stopped believing in myself. They descended through layers of morning air, the balloon responding to Sky's adjustments with practiced ease. When they touched down on the launch pad, Dr. Chen was waiting with a tablet and a satisfied expression. Vital signs stayed stable the entire time, she announced, showing them the telemetry data from the sensors Jackson had worn. Heart rate elevated but not dangerously. This might actually work. It is working, Jackson said, but his eyes never left Sky's face. Already, over the next week, they flew every morning. Each flight went a little higher, lasted a little longer. Jackson's vertigo didn't disappear, but he learned to breathe through it, to find his center even when the world wanted to spin, and Sky learned something too. She learned that sharing her sky with someone didn't diminish it. If anything, witnessing Jackson's wonder as he relearned to trust the heights made her see them fresh again, not just as research sites, but as places of beauty, of possibility, of transformation. On the 8th day, they reached 3,000 feet higher than Jackson had been since his vertigo began. He stood at the basket's edge, looking down at the clouds below with something like joy on his face. I'd forgotten, he said softly, what it feels like to be up here without terror. Just, Sky moved beside him, close enough that their shoulders pressed together. It suits you. You suit me. The words were quiet but certain. He turned to face her, and there was something new in his expression, a kind of determined tenderness that made Sky's breath shallow. These flights, this time with you, it's not just about conquering vertigo anymore. You know that, right? Jackson, I'm falling for you, Sky. His hand cupped her face, thumb gentle against her cheekbone. Slowly, the way you've been teaching me, with patience and trust and not fighting the sensation. I'm falling, and for the first time in months, I'm not afraid of it. Sky's heart thundered against her ribs. Every instinct she developed screamed at her to pull back, to protect herself, to retreat into the safe distance she'd maintained for years, but she didn't. Instead, she leaned into his touch, let herself feel the warmth of his palm against her skin, the steady presence of him beside her in this basket thousands of feet above the earth. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. I've forgotten how to let someone in. Then we'll learn together. Jackson smiled, and it was like sunrise breaking through storm clouds. We're already pretty good at learning together. The balloon swayed gently in the high-altitude winds, and Sky felt something fundamental shift inside her. She'd spent years hiding in the sky, convinced that solitude was safety, but maybe, just maybe, the real courage was in sharing your clouds with someone else, in trusting that when you fell, they'd catch you, or better yet, they'd fall with you. The storm came exactly when the models predicted it would, a late-season atmospheric river loaded with moisture from the Pacific, bearing down on the research station with all the inevitability of physics itself. Sky stood in the operations center, watching satellite imagery on multiple screens while Dr. Chen coordinated with the Valley Weather Service. This was the kind of system she'd come to the mountains to study, powerful enough to break the drought. Dangerous enough to cause flash flooding if not properly tracked. You'll want to launch ahead of the front, Dr. Chen said, highlighting pressure gradients on her display. Get your measurements before the winds become too variable. I know. Sky was already running calculations, plotting her ascent trajectory to intercept the atmospheric river at optimal altitude. This was what she lived for, this intersection of preparation and opportunity, where months of planning crystallized into a single critical flight. You're not thinking of taking him with you. Sky's hands stilled on the keyboard. He's been cleared for flights up to 5,000 feet. We'd stay below that. This isn't a therapy session, Sky. This is serious research in potentially hazardous conditions. I know that. Dr. Chen's expression softened. I also know you've been different since he arrived. Lighter somehow. But don't let, she paused, choosing her words carefully. Don't let how you feel cloud your judgment about safety protocols. I would never, no, you wouldn't intentionally. But Sky. You look at him the way pilots look at clear skies. Like he's exactly what you've been waiting for without knowing you were waiting. The accuracy of the observation made Sky's chest tight. She thought about these past 2 weeks, the daily flights that had become the center of her existence, the late-night conversations that had revealed so much more than she'd intended to share. The way Jackson had become woven into her life here so seamlessly that she couldn't imagine the station without him now. I look at the research the same way, Sky said quietly. Like it's what I've been waiting for. Then which is it? The research or the man? Sky didn't have an answer. Or rather, she had an answer she wasn't ready to speak aloud. Maybe they'd become the same thing. Maybe Jackson had taught her that her work didn't have to be separate from connection. That measuring the sky could be something shared rather than solitary. I'll follow all safety protocols, she said finally. But Sarah, he needs this. Not just the exposure therapy, he needs to feel useful again. To contribute something. Let me give him that. Dr. Chen studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Full safety equipment. Emergency descent protocols reviewed. And you abort at the first sign of trouble, not the second, not when it's convenient. The first, agreed. Agreed. Sky found Jackson in the gym, pushing through a set of controlled movements that his physical therapist had designed to improve his spatial awareness. He was focused, determined, beautiful in his concentration. Sweat gleamed on his forehead, darkened his shirt at the collar and spine when he saw her reflection in the mirror. His whole face transformed. Hey, he grabbed a towel, wiping his face as he crossed to her. You have that look. What look? The one that means there's weather coming and you're already half in love with it. His smile was warm, teasing. What kind of storm am I competing with today? Atmospheric river. Major system. I launch in 2 hours. Sky hesitated, suddenly uncertain despite her conviction in the operations center. I was wondering, would you want to come with me? Jackson's expression shifted, surprise, then excitement, then something more complicated. Into the storm. Ahead of it, we'd be measuring the leading edge, staying clear of the worst conditions. But it won't be like our calm morning flights. There will be wind shear, possible turbulence. If you're not ready, I'm ready. He said it without hesitation, and Sky felt relief wash through her. When have I not been ready to fly with you? This is different. This matters. They all matter, Sky. He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell the clean sweat of exertion, see the quickened pulse at his throat. Every flight with you matters. But if you're asking whether I can handle the pressure, yes, I can. I want to. Dr. Chen thinks I'm being reckless, letting my feelings compromise my judgment. Are you? Sky looked up at him, at this man who'd crash-landed into her carefully ordered existence and scattered it like clouds in high wind. I don't know, she admitted. All I know is that when I picture being up there in that basket studying the most important weather system of the year, I can't imagine doing it without you. Jackson's hands came up to frame her face, his touch achingly gentle despite the strength in his fingers. Then I'll be there. Whatever you need, I need you to be safe. To speak up if anything feels wrong, I will. I promise. His thumb traced her jawline, sending shivers cascading down her spine. Sky. When this flight is over, when we're safely back on the ground, I want to talk. Really talk. About what's happening between us. Her heart stuttered. What is happening between us? I think you know. His voice dropped lower, intimate. I think you've known since that first day, same as me. This thing between us, it's not just therapy or research or convenient proximity. It's Jackson. Sky's hands found his chest, resting over his heartbeat. She could feel it racing, matching her own. After the flight. Let's get through the flight first, because you're afraid of what might happen if we name this before. Because I'm afraid I'll lose my nerve if we name it. And I can't afford to lose my nerve right now, not with this system coming in. He searched her face, then nodded slowly. After the flight, but Sky. Whatever happens up there, whatever we find in that storm, it won't change how I feel. You need to know that. How do you feel? Jackson's smile was soft and devastating. Like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. For the first time since the vertigo started, I feel like I've found my purpose again. And that purpose is you. The words settled into Sky's chest like warmth, like coming home. She wanted to tell him she felt the same, that somewhere between teaching him to trust the sky again and learning to trust another person herself. She'd fallen completely and irreversibly in love with him, but the words caught in her throat. Held back by years of practiced isolation. After the flight, she whispered again. After the flight, he agreed, and kissed her forehead with such tenderness that Sky's eyes burned with unexpected tears. 2 hours later, they stood beside the balloon as the storm's leading edge approached from the west. The clouds were massive, towering columns of moisture-laden air that reached from near ground level to the stratosphere. Lightning flickered deep within them, nature's own spectacular light show. It's incredible, Jackson breathed, his hand finding hers and squeezing tight. It's dangerous, Sky corrected, but she squeezed back. Beautiful and dangerous. The best kind of science. They climbed into the basket, familiar now, this small space they'd shared so many mornings. But today felt different. Today the air crackled with more than atmospheric electricity. Today they were launching not just into weather but into whatever lay beyond the professional boundaries they'd been carefully maintaining. Sky ran through her checklist with extra precision, triple-checking each connection and sensor. Jackson helped where he could, his movements confident despite the situation's intensity. They'd become a team, she realized. Somewhere along the way, they'd learned each other's rhythms, anticipating needs before they were spoken. All systems green, Sky announced. Last chance to change your mind, not changing it. Jackson's jaw was set with that determination she'd come to recognize. Let's fly. The balloon lifted into wind that was already picking up, buffeting them more roughly than their previous gentle ascents. Sky made constant adjustments, using the burner to maintain stable altitude while the currents tried to push them off course. At 1,500 feet. They entered the cloud base suddenly immersed in thick gray vapor that reduced visibility to nothing. Sky watched her instruments intently, trusting technology over her eyes. "How are you doing?" She called over the wind. "Good." Jackson's voice was strained but steady, disoriented but not panicking. "Talk me through what's happening." So Sky did. She explained every reading, every adjustment, turning the flight into a lesson that grounded them both. The act of teaching steadied her nerves even as the balloon swayed in increasingly turbulent air. At 3,000 feet, they broke through the cloud layer into clear air between two storm bands. The sight that greeted them stole Sky's breath. Massive cloud towers surrounded them on three sides, their tops anvil flat against the stratosphere. Lightning crawled across their surfaces in brilliant webs of electricity. The setting sun, barely visible on the western horizon, painted everything in shades of purple and gold and deep, ominous gray. "My God," Jackson whispered. "I've jumped through clouds, I've flown through them in planes, but I've never." "Sky, this is—" "I know." She moved beside him, their shoulders pressing together as they gazed out at the storm's architecture. "This is why I do it." This moment, seeing what nature builds when humans aren't watching. Her instruments were recording everything: temperature gradients, moisture content, wind speed, and direction. But for once, Sky found herself less interested in the data than in the experience itself. In sharing this moment with someone who understood the terrible beauty of it. "You're crying," Jackson said softly. Sky reached up, surprised to find tears on her cheeks. "The wind know," he turned her to face him, his hands gentle on her shoulders. "You're crying because this is what you love. And for the first time, you're not experiencing it alone." He was right. The tears weren't from wind or cold, but from something breaking. Open inside her chest, some defense she'd maintained. For years, finally crumbling in the face of shared wonder. "I didn't know it could be like this," she admitted. I thought. I thought letting someone in would make it smaller somehow. Make it less mine. But Jackson, it's bigger. Everything's bigger when you're here." Sky, the balloon, lurched suddenly, caught in a powerful updraft. Sky grabbed for the controls, but the current was too strong. They were rising fast, being pulled toward the storm's heart. "Hold on." She vented hot air rapidly, fighting the atmospheric forces trying to drag them higher. But the updraft was relentless, and they shot past 4,000 feet. Then for 500, Jackson's face had gone pale, but his hands were steady as he gripped the basket's edge. "What do you need?" "The emergency descent valve, red handle, your left." They worked together with practiced efficiency, Sky managing the burner while Jackson operated the emergency systems. For several heart-stopping moments, they continued rising 5,000 feet. Then 5,200 before their combined efforts finally arrested the ascent. Then they were dropping. Faster than Sky liked, but controlled enough to be safe. The balloon plunged back through the cloud layer, buffeted by wind shear that sent them spinning slowly. "Jackson, your vertigo, I've got it." His voice was tight but determined. "I'm not letting go. Not of this basket and not of you." They broke through the bottom of the clouds at 2,000 feet, the station visible below them through scattered rain. Sky guided them down with every ounce of skill she possessed, fighting crosswinds and downdrafts, while Jackson called out altitude readings from the backup instruments. When the basket finally touched Earth, harder than any of their previous landings, but still. Safe, they both stood frozen for a moment, adrenaline singing through their veins. Then Jackson's arms were around her, pulling her close. Sky buried her face in his chest, feeling his heart hammer against her cheek, feeling his hand cradle the back of her head with infinite tenderness. "We made it," she breathed. "We made it," he confirmed. Together, she pulled back just enough to look up at him. His hair was wild from the wind, his eyes bright with leftover fear and exhilaration. He looked like some storm god, beautiful and dangerous and entirely hers. "You said you wanted to talk," Sky whispered. "After the flight." "Well, we're after." Jackson's laugh was shaky. "Yeah, we are." His hand came up to cup her face, and the look in his eyes made her breath stop entirely. "I love you, Sky Rodriguez." "I'm in love with you." "I have been since that first morning when you caught me falling and made me believe I could fly again." The words hung in the rain-freshened air between them. Brave and true and terrifying, Sky had spent years building walls against exactly this moment, against vulnerability and need and the devastating possibility of loss. Every instinct screamed at her to pull back, to protect herself, but she'd just flown into a storm with this man, had trusted him with her life, her work, her carefully guarded wonder at the world. What was love compared to that? "I love you too," she heard herself say, and the words felt like falling that moment of surrender when you stop fighting gravity and just let yourself drop into open air. "I'm terrified and I don't know how to do this, but Jackson, I love you." His smile broke like sunrise over storm clouds. "Say it again." "I love you." "Again." "I love," he kissed her. Finally, after weeks of dancing around this moment, he kissed her. His lips were soft against hers, gentle despite the intensity of what had just passed between them. The kiss tasted like rain and relief and promises neither of them had dared to make before. Sky melted into him, her arms winding around his neck as the basket swayed gently in the settling wind. This kiss was nothing like flying, it was better. It was coming home after being lost in the sky for too long. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Jackson rested his forehead against hers. "Tell me this is real. Tell me I'm not imagining this. It's real." Sky's hands framed his face, thumbs tracing his cheekbones. "You're real. This is real. I should probably be terrified right now. I mean, I still have vertigo. I still don't know if I'll ever jump again. My whole future is uncertain, and I've never been less afraid in my life." His laugh was wondering. "Because I have you. Because whatever happens next, we'll figure it out together." There was that word again, together. But this time, Sky didn't flinch from it. This time, she let it wrap around her like warmth, like safety, like a promise written in clouds. "Together," she agreed, and kissed him again as thunder rumbled overhead and the storm finally broke. Washing the mountain clean, the rain continued through the night, drumming against the station's reinforced windows with steady insistence. Sky lay in Jackson's arms in her narrow bunk. They'd wordlessly agreed they weren't spending this night apart, listening to the storm outside and the slower, steadier storm of his breathing. "Can't sleep?" he murmured against her hair, too wound up still. She traced patterns on his chest, feeling the solid reality of him beneath her fingertips. "That updraft could have been really bad, but it wasn't. We handled it." His hand ran up and down her spine, soothing. "You were incredible up there, by the way. The way you stayed calm, made decisions under pressure, Sky. I've flown with the best pilots in the world, and you're right there with them. I had good help. I followed instructions. You saved us." Sky propped herself up on one elbow, looking down at his face in the dim light filtering through the window. We saved us. That's what I'm still getting used to the we part. I've been handling everything alone for so long. Jackson's hand came up to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch achingly tender. You don't have to anymore. Unless you want to. I'm not trying to take over your life or your work. I know. That's what makes it possible. She leaned down, kissing him softly. You understand that the sky is part of me. You're not asking me to choose between you and the altitude. How could I? The altitude is where I found you. His smile was visible even in the darkness. Besides, I'm pretty fond of heights myself. When they're not making the world spin, how's that been? The vertigo, I mean. Today was intense. Jackson considered for a moment. Present but manageable. I think. I think maybe part of the problem was that I was fighting it so hard. Treating it like an enemy instead of just a condition I have to work with. Being up there with you, focused on the mission instead of my fear, it helped. So I'm therapeutic, Sky teased. You're everything. The words were simple but weighted with meaning. Sky, I need you to understand I didn't come to this mountain looking for love. I came here broken, desperate, barely holding myself together. I thought if I could just conquer the vertigo, I'd get my old life back. And now? Now I realize I don't want my old life back. He pulled her closer until they were face to face on the narrow pillow. I want this life. The one where I wake up next to you and spend my days learning to trust myself again. The one where we chase storms together and push each other to be braver than we knew we could be. Sky's throat tightened with emotion. What about your career? Skydiving, teaching, that was everything to you. It was everything because I didn't know about this. His hand splayed across her lower back, warm through the thin fabric of her sleep shirt. Maybe I can't do tandem jumps anymore. Maybe I'll never set another altitude record. But Sky, what if there's something better? What if there's us? She wanted to tell him yes, wanted to promise him forever right there in the darkness. But years of self-reliance made her cautious. What does us look like? I live on a mountain. My work keeps me here. Then I'll stay on the mountain too. For how long? Until you get bored? Until you resent being stuck here with me? Jackson's eyes searched hers, and she saw understanding dawn in them. You're afraid I'll leave? Everyone leaves eventually. Sky. He sat up, pulling her with him so they were facing each other in the tangle of blankets. Listen to me. I know your history. Dr. Chen told me about your family. How your parents never understood why you chose research over something more practical. How your ex gave you an ultimatum, him or the altitude. Sky flinched. She'd forgotten Sarah knew all that. It's not relevant. It's completely relevant. You've been abandoned by everyone who was supposed to love you unconditionally. Of course you're afraid I'll do the same. His hands found hers, lacing their fingers together. But I'm not them. I'm someone who understands that your work isn't a hobby or a phase, it's your calling. And more than that, I'm someone who's figuring out that maybe my calling isn't what I thought it was. What do you mean? I mean, he took a breath, and she could see him gathering courage. What if I stayed? Not as your patient or your guest, but as your partner. I have instructor certifications, experience with safety protocols. I could help run exposure therapy programs for other people dealing with vertigo or height phobias. We could develop this into something bigger, a center for rehabilitation that combines your atmospheric research with therapeutic flights. Sky's heart stuttered. You've thought about this. I've thought about nothing else for the past week. His thumb traced circles on her palm. I love you, Sky, and I want to build a life with you, not despite your work, but because of it. I want to be the person who helps you chase storms and celebrates your discoveries and holds you when the data doesn't make sense. I want to be your partner in every sense of the word. Tears spilled down Sky's cheeks before she could stop them. I don't know how to do that. How to let someone all the way in, then we'll learn. Same way we learned everything else, slowly, carefully, trusting the process. He wiped her tears with his thumbs, his touch infinitely gentle. Sky, you taught me that falling doesn't have to mean crashing. Sometimes falling means finding your way home. You're my home, she whispered, the truth of it resonating through her entire body. Somehow, in just a few weeks, you became my home. Then let me stay. Let me love you. Let me prove that not everyone leaves. Sky looked at this man who'd crash landed into her isolated existence and turned everything upside down. This man who'd seen her at her most guarded and loved her anyway. This man who wanted to build a future in the clouds with her, and she made a choice. She chose to fall. Yes, she breathed. Stay, build something with me. Love me. All of it, yes. Jackson's smile was radiant enough to light the darkest sky. Yeah, yeah, she laughed through her tears. I want all of it. The partnership, the center, the life together. I want to wake up next to you and chase storms with you and learn how to trust that you're not going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere, he promised, except higher. With you, he kissed her then, deep and claiming and full of promise. Sky surrendered to it completely, let herself fall into the sensation of being loved by someone who understood that her need for Sky and her need for connection weren't opposites, they were complementary halves of the same whole. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Jackson rested his forehead against hers. I have something I need to tell you. Something I should have mentioned earlier, but the timing never seemed right. Sky's stomach clenched with sudden anxiety. What? Before the vertigo, I was working on a project, a high-altitude jump from 50,000 feet. Would have broken my own record, made history. The sponsors are still interested, even with my condition. They called last week. What did you tell them? That I needed time to think about it. He pulled back to look at her fully. Sky, even if the vertigo disappeared completely tomorrow, I don't think I'd do that jump. Not because I can't, but because I don't need to anymore. I don't need to throw myself out of planes to feel alive when I have this. When I have you, you'd really give that up? The chance to make history. I'd give up anything for this. For us, his conviction was absolute. But I'm not giving it up, I'm choosing something better. I'm choosing a different kind of flight. One where I don't have to jump alone. Sky felt something unlock in her chest, some final barrier crumbling. I love you, she said again, and this time the words came easy as breathing. I love you so much, it terrifies me. Good, be terrified with me, Jackson grinned. We'll be terrified together, the way we do everything else. They lay back down, tangled together in the narrow bed, listening to rain drumming overhead. Outside, the storm was passing, clouds fragmenting to reveal glimpses of stars. Tell me what you're thinking, Jackson murmured. I'm thinking about the future. About what we could build here. Sky's voice was dreamy, hopeful in a way she hadn't allowed herself to be in years. The Exposure Therapy Center, we could really help people, Jackson. People who've lost their confidence, their careers, their sense of self because of fears they can't control. People like me, people like both of us. Because I was hiding too, in my own way, afraid to let anyone close enough to matter. And now? Now I'm still afraid. But I'm brave enough to love you anyway. Jackson's arms tightened around her. That's all I need. Your fear and your bravery and everything in between. They drifted toward sleep slowly, wrapped in each other and in the warmth of promises made. The last thing Skye remembered before unconsciousness claimed her was the steady rhythm of Jackson's heartbeat against her cheek. Solid and real, and here, he was here, and for the first time in 3 years, Skye didn't feel alone on her mountain. She felt home. Morning came soft and golden, the post-storm sunlight painting the station's walls in shades of honey and amber. Skye woke slowly, gradually becoming aware of warmth beside her. The weight of an arm across her waist, breath gentle against her neck. Jackson, she smiled without opening her eyes. Letting herself simply exist in this moment, the rare and precious feeling of waking beside someone you loved. Someone who loved you back. I can feel you smiling, Jackson murmured, his voice rough with sleep. How? Your whole body relaxes when you're happy. I've been studying you. His lips brushed her shoulder. Good morning, Captain Rodriguez. Good morning. Mr. Morrison. She turned in his arms, finding his storm cloud eyes already open and watching her with an expression of such tender contentment that her breath caught. How long have you been awake? A while. I didn't want to miss a moment of this. Of what? Me sleeping? Of you peaceful, unguarded, of finally knowing that this is real, that I get to wake up next to you, not just today, but tomorrow and the day after that and all the days beyond. Skies. Hand came up to trace the line of his jaw, feeling the slight roughness of morning stubble. Is this what it's always like? This feeling? What feeling? Like everything finally makes sense. Like all the lonely years were just. Leading here, Jackson caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. I don't know if it's always like this, but I know it's like this with us. They lay together in comfortable silence, watching dust motes dance in the sunbeams slanting through the window. Outside, the sky was clear and impossibly blue, the kind of perfect post-storm clarity that made the atmosphere seem freshly washed. We should check the data from yesterday, Skye said eventually. Though she made no move to leave the warmth of the bed. We should, Jackson agreed. Also not moving. Dr. Chen is probably wondering where we are. She probably knows exactly where we are. He grinned. And is being very diplomatic about it. Skye laughed. I'm not usually like this. So, distracted from work. Good. You work too hard anyway, says the man who used to jump out of planes for a living. Keyword, used to. Jackson's expression grew more serious, though no less content. Skye, I meant what I said last night. About staying, about building something here with you. I want to start making that real. Today, today. Why wait? Let's talk to Dr. Chen about the therapeutic flight program. Start planning, getting proposals together, reaching out to specialists. I want to begin our life together, not just talk about it. Skye studied his face, seeing the determination there alongside the love. This was Jackson's way. Once he made a decision, he committed fully. No half measures, no hedging bets. He decided she was his future, and now he wanted to build it with the same fearless focus he'd once brought to skydiving. Okay, she said softly. Let's start today. His smile could have powered the station for a week. Yeah? Yeah, let's build our dream. They finally left the narrow bunk, dressing in comfortable layers against the mountain chill. Sky's small room felt different now, not the lonely refuge she'd created, but the beginning of something shared. She watched Jackson pull on his fleece, run his fingers through his sleep-mussed hair, and felt her heart expand with the impossible reality of him. He was really staying. This was really happening. In the communal kitchen, they found Dr. Chen making coffee with a knowing smile that she didn't quite manage to hide. "Good morning, you two. Sleep well?" Sarah, Sky felt he tries in her cheeks. "What?" "I'm just asking." But Chen's eyes sparkled with amusement and something softer, approval, maybe, or happiness for Sky. "There's fresh coffee, and I made extra breakfast. Figured you might both need your strength today." Jackson laughed outright. "You're not even trying to be subtle. Why should I? I've been watching Sky hide up here for 3 years. If you're the reason she's finally coming back to life, I'm going to celebrate that." Chen poured them both coffee, her expression fond. "Besides, the way you two work together, that's something special. Rare, would be a shame to waste it." Over breakfast, they outlined their vision. Jackson had clearly been thinking about this longer than just the past week. He had ideas about equipment modifications, safety protocols, partnership possibilities with rehabilitation centers in the valley. Sky added her knowledge of atmospheric conditions, optimal flight parameters, sensor arrays that could provide therapeutic value while gathering research data. Dr. Chen listened, asked questions, made notes. "This could really work," she said finally. "And the station's board has been looking for ways to expand our mission beyond pure research. Community outreach, public engagement, this hits all those marks. So we have your support." Sky asked. "You have more than my support. You have my full backing. I'll start working on the proposal today." Chen reached across the table, squeezing Sky's hand. "I'm proud of you, sweetheart, for taking this chance, for letting someone in." After breakfast, Sky and Jackson walked out to the launch pad. The balloon from yesterday's flight had been secured overnight, and Sky needed to check it for any storm damage. But they moved slowly, stopping frequently to look out at the view, the endless sky above, the valley far below, the world spread out like a promise. "It never gets old, does it?" Jackson said quietly. "This perspective, seeing how vast everything is. No, that's why I can't imagine leaving." Sky leaned against him, and his arm came around her automatically. "This is where I belong, where we belong." She looked up at him. "You're really sure? You're not going to wake up one day and regret giving up the adrenaline, the fame, the old life?" "Sky," he turned to face her fully, both hands coming up to frame her face. "I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to hear it, really hear it. Ready?" She nodded, throat tight. "My old life ended the day the vertigo started. I've spent 6 months mourning it, trying desperately to resurrect something that's gone. But this morning, waking up beside you, I finally realized I don't want that life back. Even if someone offered me a miracle cure, even if I could jump again without any fear, I'd still choose this. Jackson, I'd still choose you. The mountain, the work we're going to do together. Because for the first time since I was 18 years old, I feel like I'm doing something that matters beyond my own ego. I'm helping people. I'm conducting meaningful research. I'm loving someone extraordinary." His thumbs traced her cheekbones. "You're not my consolation prize, Sky. You're my evolution." Tears spilled down her cheeks, but they were the good kind, the kind that came from joy too large to contain. "I don't know what I did to deserve you. You caught me when I was falling, taught me to fly again. Loved me when I'd forgotten how to love myself. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, the tip of her nose. You gave me back the sky, sky. How could I want anything else? They stood there on the launch pad, wrapped in each other and the mountain wind, while the sun climbed higher and the day spread out before them. Below, the valley was waking small towns and farms, roads like ribbons, lives being lived with all their ordinary complexity. Above, the sky stretched endless and blue, waiting for them. Want to go up? Sky asked softly. One more flight, just the two of us, before everything changes. Everything's already changed, but yes, let's fly. They prepped the balloon together, their movements synchronized from weeks of practice. The inflation system hummed its familiar song. The envelope began to swell, filling with heated air, becoming their vessel between earth and heaven. When they climbed into the basket, Sky felt complete in a way she never had before. This wasn't flying alone anymore, carrying the weight of her solitude like invisible ballast. This was flying together, sharing the adventure, the wonder, the infinite possibilities written in clouds. The balloon lifted smoothly, and the station fell away. They rose through layers of atmosphere, each one a different world. At 2,000 feet, Jackson took her hand. At 3,000, he pulled her close. At 4,000, they were dancing slowly in the basket, swaying to music only they could hear. I love you, Sky whispered against his chest. I love you, he whispered back. And the words echoed out across the vast open sky like a vow. They flew until the sun was high overhead, until the research data was collected and the fuel was running low. Then Sky guided them down gently, carefully, with Jackson's help at every step. When the basket touched earth, they stayed inside for a long moment, neither wanting to break the spell of what they'd just shared. Welcome home, Sky finally said. Welcome home, Jackson echoed, and kissed her with all the tenderness and promise of a lifetime still to come. And so our story finds its resting place, dear listener. Sky and Jackson, two souls who'd lost themselves in different kinds of altitude, discovering that the greatest height is reached not alone but together. They built their center, helped countless people rediscover courage, and every morning they rose into the sky side by side. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is fall. Sometimes the wisest thing is to let someone catch you. And sometimes, just sometimes, two broken pieces fit together to make something stronger than either was alone. As you drift now toward your own rest, imagine their balloon rising into endless blue. Imagine the warmth of someone's hand in yours. Imagine love that lifts you higher than any altitude, love that makes you brave enough to fly. Sleep now, beloved listener. Sleep wrapped in the knowledge that somewhere, someone is searching for you the way Jackson searched for Sky. Someone who will see your fears and love them along with your courage. Someone who will teach you that falling isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning. Good night, sleep well, and may your dreams carry you gently home.